Hey, what's going on, Game Leapers? This is Eags. Welcome to the 1221 10 Most Broken Champions video. And like I said for yesterday's video, you guys, well, let me put it this way. I'm going to give you runes and builds and summoner spells and all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's probably not going to increase your elo really by that much, let's be honest. But just before we do get into the video, one thing you guys have to do before you get into your next game is to download the Professor app linked in the description, because it allows you to quickly import the best rune page used from the best players in the world on the champion you're picking. You don't have to make the rune page, just one click of a button and bang, you're ready to go. But that's not all, because the app also allows you to scout your opponent, and the app will give you their stats, how well they play their champion, so you can know more about your opponent than they know about themselves. And the app also gives you an in-game overlay, so you can compare your CS and your kill participation to your rank or even challenger players like Faker. And there's a reason why 3 million people have downloaded this free application, guys. It's because it works. So get around it in Season 12. Those links are in the description. Now, starting off, we will start in the top lane, and we have two top laners in the top 10. The first of these being Darius. So for Darius, another patch where you're just not getting nerfed, so he's got to be on this countdown. Now, you might ask, why is Darius broken? Well, let's think about it. Ever since 12.10, so the durability meta, ever since they hit the rift, Darius has just been one of the strongest champions, let alone top laners. Why is this? Well, because he loves extended fights, because champions are tankier, the hemorrhage stacking, the low W cooldown, the Conqueror, the 2 combat summoner spells, if you think about how teleport was changed earlier in the season, because in most games, if not every game, you will be running flash and goes, it just makes you such a massive kill threat and so strong in the 1v1. And there are very few champions who actually beat Darius, and to be honest, these champions are kind of rarely played. So if we think about a champion like Quinn, for example, Teemo you might see every so often, so most of the time you're probably going to be in a good matchup. Also, because of the 1220 patch, Darius Gage got some really big buffs. This has now become more viable and obviously just better. Just make sure, guys, if you're playing Darius, think about your mythic item. In some games you might want to go Trinity Force, particularly if you're snowballing, but in other games you might want to go Stride Breaker to gap close and actually stick to the enemy champions. Getting kited as Darius is your big weakness, so think about what mythic item you're investing in that particular game. Now, another top laner, let's just say you don't want to play a champion maybe who's as strong as Darius in the laning phase. You kind of just want to chill, you want to sit back, you want to farm. Well, how about picking Nasus? Because of the buffs from last patch, so your ultimate getting some massive buffs, so your Q's range, your siphoning strike, the range while your ultimate is going, getting doubled. This is huge. And also the tick damage from your Fury of the Sands, this is happening twice as often. Also your Wither, so the actual attack speed slow, scaling more of the movement speed so you give them when you cripple them. This is also huge because most champions in the top lane do rely on some sort of attack speed, whether it be from their runes or even items. So this has been massive for Nasus, and this is why you can see in close to 620,000 matches in every single elo across the world to have a 52.4% win rate. This is kind of nutty. And despite Frozenheart getting nerfed in 1220, Renekton's bro is still proving to be one of the strongest champions on the rift. Now, heading to the mid lane, guys, we've actually got 4 champions here to talk about, and the first of these champions is a champion who's getting buffed in 1221, and to be honest, this could be like the biggest, how do I put it, like noob-friendly buff of all time, but this is happening to Malzahar. So what's happening to Malz in 1221 is that your E is now going to execute minions below 15 to 45 HP, depending on your level. So from levels 1 to 11, this is happening. This means for the early game, which is level 1 to 11, right, probably until like 15 minutes, you don't even have to auto attack minions to kill them. I mean, you kind of didn't before because your E's tick damage will kill them, but now it just immediately automatically executes them. So like I said in yesterday's video, if you guys don't have CS per minute when you're playing Malzahar in 1221, you must have your monitor turned off. It is going to be so easy to play, so easy to scale now because you're getting those extra minion kills. I would just be a little bit careful though, guys, blind picking Malzahar. He does have some really hard matchups, particularly matchups where it's very easy for them to proc your passive, because your Void Shift, the shield around you, that is really what makes Malzahar difficult for a lot of champions in the mid lane. But you can see the toughest matchups here, and this is across the board. We have Swain who can easily proc it, Victor with his E, Brand with his E and his W, Diana with her Q, Talia with her Q, Ziggs poke. So any champion with some sort of range consistent poke is really annoying for Malzahar. So again, do be careful of blind picking him, but in 1221, innately speaking, he will be very strong. But let's say you don't want to play Malzahar, you actually want to kind of like express maybe your skill in a way. Well, how about picking Zed in 1221? And you can see these stats from Challenger to have close to a 53% win rate in over 1500 matches. This champion is legit broken. Now, as far as the rune page goes here, you can see that we're still abusing the new Scorch. Well, not really new, but it did get buffed in 1214. So the extra damage you're getting from this, it's going to stick to the enemy champion more. And because of Zed, you're probably going to start with 3 health pots. You can start with a refillable potion like it's recommending here, particularly If you're confident on Zed and you're not really that scared of the matchup, for sure, you won't get as much sustain as 3 health potions, but it is actually just a more economical start if you know how to play the Master of Shadows. Now, other things that are going for Zed, well, if we think about the E-buff a couple of patches ago, so the actual energy cost was down by 10. This is really useful for spamming your Shadow Slash, particularly in the late game, because in the late game, you'll have so much ability haste. Your E will be on like a 2-3 second cooldown, so spamming this really easy now. And also because lots of champions in the mid lane got hurt as well from that same 12-14 kind of Scorch patch because sustain got nerfed. So like I mentioned, with health potions not giving you as much HP, refillables, same thing. And most champions in the mid lane, unlike Zed, are not going to start with 3 health potions, right? It might be 2, it might even be 1 if they have a D shield start or a D blade start. So Zed at the moment is in the best position he probably has ever been in. So if you want to play an attack damage mid laner, Zed has to be the choice. And a bit like Zed, guys, another champion who got changed recently, who's really just taken off because of these changes, this is Syndra. And look at these stats for me and Challenger across the world, close to a 52% win rate. This champion being picked in over 21% of games. Like, if she doesn't get nerfed, I'll be super surprised. So now is the time if you want that LP, if you want to print it, Syndra. She has never been in a better position, and in solo queue, she's normally pretty bad, right? Because she's very mobile, she has kind of longish cooldowns, you just have to know how to pilot the champion, right? You have to have a brain, and most people, unfortunately, they don't really think that much when they play. But the champion is just outright busted now that you probably don't have to think at all to win games, as the stats prove. So because of the new passive you have based off the splinter stacking, so when you get to 40, 60, 80 splinter stacks, your basic abilities evolve. And these evolutions are so broken, so your Q, you get 2 of them, your W dealing true damage, and your E, the actual radius of your scatter of the week, going to 90 degrees. Like, are you legit? How can you miss this? It is impossible to not hit it. So a bit like Malzahar in a way, it makes it more kind of like low elo friendly. I don't want to sound too toxic, but it is the truth. If you haven't played Syndra before, it just makes her a lot easier to actually play and get used to. And of course, once you get like Luden's Tempest, Sorcerer's Shoes, Shadow Flame, full magic penetration, full AP, the champion does a ridiculous amount of damage. This is also kind of why we want to be running Gathering Storm on our runes when we're taking First Strike as our keystone. Very important here, because Gathering Storm is about scaling. That's what Syndra is now. So no longer are we really playing Syndra to dominate the laning phase, which is what you were doing before, because your Q is on a longer cooldown, because of your new passive, you're more about scaling, getting into the mid to late game, hitting those item spikes, and then just one-shotting anyone who's in front of you. So Syndra is another mid laner, but the last mid laner, let's just say you don't fancy playing any of these, or how about picking Vex? And ever since Vex got buffed a few patches ago now, so we're talking her Q getting buffed, so the AP ratio, we're also talking the cooldown going down to 4 seconds at level 9 or 5 points in your Mistral Bolt. Like, that doesn't really sound balanced, and guess what? It's not. Like, look at these stats in Platinum and above, a 52% win rate for a champion, well, who's pretty vulnerable in the mid lane. Like, she's pretty easy to kill, and apart from her Q, her cooldowns are pretty long, but just like Zed, the Scorch buff, which you can abuse, like look at this rune page for me, 53% win rate when you run this setup, because of the actual damage you deal now, with Scorch and the low cooldown in your Q, it's very annoying to deal with. And just like Syndra, when we're going into full magic penetration build with Luden's Tempest, Sorcerer's Shoes, Shadow Flame, you deal as much damage as anyone. I also think Vex is just really good for solo queue because of your gap closing potential in your ultimate. As soon as an enemy champion stuffs up, or as soon as they're caught out by maybe your teammate, you go in there and you one-shot them. So it might not be the optimal playstyle, I guess, maybe in pro play at the moment, it's more about those protracted team fights and dealing damage over time, but in solo queue, just using all your cooldowns on one target who misplays, and guess what? Lots of people are going to be misplaying. This is still an excellent way to play the game, so Vex is the last mid laner to consider. Now heading into the jungle, guys, one champion who's actually getting nerfed in 12-21, but to be honest, will still be incredibly broken. This is Bel'Veth. You can probably tell how annoyed I am about talking about this champion like every single patch. And next patch, yes, she is getting nerfed, but the nerfs really aren't substantial. So your E's cooldown is increasing by 4 seconds early game to 2 seconds in the late game once you actually max this out. But is this really going to change that much? Because you're probably using your E only once during a team fight, right? Like, are you really going to use your E twice? Probably not. So I don't think this is really going to change all that much. And your ultimate's HP, based off the minion's HP, this is scaling down from 40 to 70% to 40 to 60%. But once again, are these really going to bring this champion back down to earth? I don't think so. And just look at these stats for me in Challenger. Close to a 55% win rate. She has one of the highest win rates in the highest elo, and you can see her ban rate close to 40%. That's what the best players in the world think about this champion. They think she is broken beyond belief. And she is. So keep picking her in 12-21 despite the nerfs. Maybe her ban rate even goes down and you can pick her even more. Now the second and last jungler to talk about, let's just say maybe you have a bit of self-respect. You don't want to play a champion maybe as innately broken as Bel'Veth. Well, let's just say you want to play a more utility-based champion to help your teammates out. Well, picking Rammus because of the buff buffs in 1220. Very wise decision, right? So you can see these stats for Rammus. Because your defensive bull curl, there is no self-slow anymore. So when you press your W and activate it, you're not slowing your movement speed. This has been huge. And this is also why, ideally speaking, you want to be running Ghost, because you can stay attached to the enemy champions for as long as possible. Also, your ultimate is scaling more of your movement speed that you have, so the actual speed of your ultimate when you dive in there, this makes it even harder to react to and dodge for the enemy champions. Of course, you really want to be picking Rammus when the enemy champions have a lot of close range auto attackers, so we're talking champions like maybe Yasuo, Yone, who you see in pretty much every solo queue game, maybe an attack speed based AD carry. Rammus just thrives in these situations. And to be honest, he's so broken, you could probably pick him into a full AP team and still pop off, really because of the buffs from 1220. Now heading down to the bot lane, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, we only have one AD carry, and this AD carry is Draven. Now I was close to maybe putting Tristana on this countdown, maybe even Miss Fortune, who does very well in like every single elo, but Draven, to be honest, when played by the best, when you know how to play this champion, I just think you get the most out of him, and when you get the most out of him, he is the scariest AD carry and just the best. But you might be thinking, well, Eclipse got nerfed, like how can Draven be OP if Eclipse got nerfed like that much? Well, it really wasn't that bad for Draven. Remember, you're still getting lethality from Dirk, and once you get Dirk and then Essence Reaver, so that's the build, you get a Dirk, you sit on it, Essence Reaver, then you upgrade it to Eclipse, that Essence Reaver spike is still massive, and because you're such a strong laner, and there really aren't many AD carries who can actually compete with you during the laning phase, you can crush them and get snowballing. Once you cash in as well, once you do get a kill, you cash in those adoration stacks, the amount of gold you get, you keep this ticking over, especially if you're running treasure hunter in your runes, like we're recommending here. This can be a super broken snowbally setup, and you'll end games before anyone else. Even with lethal tempo getting nerfed for ranged champions, so the range going from 75 to 50, well, everyone's in the same boat, so it's not like one champion got nerfed, and for Draven, 50 extra range is easily enough to compete with those other AD carries. Now the final champion, guys, on this countdown, this is the only support here, and because Blitzcrank is kind of getting some big nerfs in 1221, the only standout support therefore in 1221 is going to be Amumu, and you can see these stats for the Mummy in Platinum and above, close to a 52% win rate. He is kind of like the budget Blitzcrank at the moment anyway, so in 1220, like, Blitz is just unbelievably broken. But Amumu isn't really that far behind, so if you do want to dominate the early laning phase, particularly if you're against some sort of range composition, so if you're against like a Caitlyn or a Lux, if you're against a mobile AD carries and support, Amumu, because of your bandage toss, and remember, you get 2 of these, that's how balanced it is, you can easily catch them out as soon as they make a mistake, and guess what? They are going to make mistakes. You are always going to have potential, and even if you don't, your amazing team fighting with your Curse of the Sad Mummy, it always keeps you in a game. And just one more thing, guys, if you are playing into like a double range bot lane as Amumu, taking Glacial honestly is your best option, because the slow is just so powerful. This will also allow you to run Hex Flash in your runes, so as soon as you blow their flash, your Hex Flash, if you do land that bandage toss again, 100% the enemy bot lane will die. So do think about that in champ select as well. But those were the 10 most broken champions, guys, for 1221. Let me know any comments, any questions in the comment section, and if you do want these videos to continue, let us know by leaving a like down below. Thank you so much for watching. This has been a